Welcome to the good, the bad, and the sequel Q&A. My name's Doug. So the next sequel that we're covering in our scary sequel month is American Werewolf in Paris. It's a sequel that I remember seeing as a kid. My dad liked the original. He showed it to me really young. So when this one came out, it was really cool. It was like, wow, this is a movie that the original came out, 16-ish years before. This one has Tom Everett Scott, Julie Delpy, Julie Bowen, who are right around this time. Happy Gilmore. Love her, still love her. Amazing actress, so funny. And so it's going to be fun to cover this one. It's been a long time in the making. I even have it on VHS, so I think I'm going to plug in the old VCR and get this party started. And for American Werewolf in Paris, I talked to an actor. This is one of his first big credits. He was doing these bar plays, which you're gonna go nuts when you hear this week's guest, actor Alan McKenna's story. So Alan didn't really want to act too much. So his career started later in life. He was playing football, soccer in England, because where he's from. He's from London. And there was a girl that convinces him, hey, you look like I want to do a play at the bar, because that's something they do over in England, but not at the pub that he was at, that he would frequent. And she goes, I think you should be the star. And she goes, why? She goes, I don't know. I think you look like a star. And then he had the same experience like a year before. Somebody mistaken him for an actor. Are you an actor? And then he fell in love with it. So that's a really neat story. It's really cool to talk to actors, especially from across the pond in London, just to hear the differences, because he works on a lot of London, England-based TV and movies. So it's really cool to talk about the differences, talk about his passion for writing. He just started getting into directing with short films. And we talked about some of the shows he was on that are like institutions over there in London. So it's pretty cool to hear about those shows that are like the staples, the soaps that are on the all the time, like we have here, like One Life to Live, Young and the Restless. He's on Emmerdale Farm, which is a show that's been on for years, and he made the joke that it's just called Emmerdale now because I guess they sold the farm. But that show was on from like the 70s. A lot of the shows he was on are just ones that have been like institutions, and so many people got their start there. So it was a lot of fun to talk to him about that. So do me a favor, if you're new here, please subscribe, please share, please follow us on all social media at Seekers Only. Like and subscribe on YouTube. That helps us out. Wow, it's gonna be a lot of fun. Alan is awesome. His earbuds, which when we were live, I didn't realize that his earbuds were kind of going out. So towards the end of the conversation, it's really not too noticeable. It's like every 30 seconds he goes away for a second, but you can still hear it. I try to pump up the audio the best that I can without making it too hurtful on the ears, but still an amazing interview. Sounds great. Without further ado, here is actor Alan McKenna. So yeah, Alan, I love doing these because I love hearing about folks' journey, because it's, entering the world of acting and Hollywood and working in film and TV is not the easiest job. So it's always quite interesting to hear why folks got started. So you grew up in what part of England did you grow up?
I say London. Yeah.
Yeah.
South London. Yeah.
What were some early influences? Like, when was the point that you were like, hey, let's, was it like grammar school, taking drama classes, or was it seeing a movie at the movie theater? What was that big change for you to do?
It certainly wasn't. There's no one in my family, so there's none of that. And then I did drama. I remember at infant school, just in the school play, and was told off for moving too much. So I think it took me off for a long time. And then it took a while. I mean, I always liked films. My dad used to just watch sport, but he'd watch a couple of films, and it was Papillon and The Great Escape. So I'd
Nice.
watch those with him, and and then the whole spaghetti western thing I kind of liked, but everybody seemed like a million miles away from a London boy from South London. So it was actually when Gary Oldman, Tim Roth, etc. started coming out that you go, oh, here you go. They're from South London. They're you know they're boys that, well, men then that you could aspire to and think, well, and also the subject matter of their early work was very much of the world that I was growing up in. So that it was that was a pull. I don't think I knew at that time it was a pull for me to do what they were doing, but it was certainly interesting. And then I had a strange experience in a pub with a girl who said, "You look like an actor," and I was like, "Really? Which one?" And she's going, "No, you just look like an actor." And I thought that was really strange because, I mean, actors are, as we know, all shapes and sizes and all denominations. So anyway, maybe that stuck in my head. And it's another pub story, but a few years after that, I used to drink in this local pub. We used to play football for them, and then we'd go back there after the match. And this Australian girl, Terry, who used to be in there all the time, was well, she worked in the city, but she'd be in there at the weekends. And she said, "We're going to do a play in the pub. We're going to do a play, and I'm going to cast it out of everyone that's just, the locals." And I was like, "It's a weird idea, but go on, off you go." And then she came around to me and said, "And you're in it, and you're playing the main role." And I was like, "Well, where's that from? How did that happen?" And she was just adamant. And then I think she plied me with alcohol, and I said yes. And then eventually, so we were going to do it on a Sunday evening, and it was only about 30, 40 minutes long, the whole thing, probably not even that. And the pub was packed because everybody who was in it also brought, some of their family or friends came, and it was quite a busy day anyway. It was a bank holiday. So I remember Terry came up to me and saying, "We're going to have to do it twice. Not everyone can get in." I was like, that's not happening. There's no way that's happening. And it's the crazy old cliche that I did it and then went, "Yeah, let's do it again." And I think I was in. So yeah, I blame alcohol.
That's wild. So so how old are you at this point? Because it's 18 to drink it? No, what is the drinking age in London?
Oh yeah, no, I came to it in my 20s. So I was probably 25 or something then. Yeah, 26, something like that. And then I didn't do anything with that. I sort of enjoyed the experience. And then a couple of years later, I had my own. I used to work in the print industry, amongst other things, and printing magazine covers, things like that. And we set up on our own to go solo. But it was pretty much me on my own. And I realized I went from having one boss to having about 40. And having never been a fan of authority and being told what to do, I kind of jumped ship quite early, and then found myself working at a language school in Richmond, which is a beautiful part of London, where they filmed Ted Lasso, actually.
Oh, okay.
So I lived there for about 10 years, and they had a drama school there, and I bumped into somebody who'd been and went to meet the principal, David, and he said, "Oh, you'd be great. Come down." And and I ended up going there for a year. Tom Hardy went the year after me, actually, before he went to drama school. But it was because Tom Hardy's dad was a friend of the guy that ran it. And then I did that year course, which worked for me. It wouldn't work for everybody, because I think when people ask me now, I say, either just go and work or go to one of the best schools you can, because you get the contacts afterwards. But for me, it was fine because I was later in my 20s, and I just started doing free work straight away. I did. We have a thing in London. It's probably similar to off Broadway. Where you're doing theatre in rooms in pubs and in the back alleys of nowhere. And so I started doing that and student movies, and then just kind of built from there, really.
When was the first time you were on a set? Because IMDb has like American Werewolf in Paris in '97.
Yeah, do you know what? I mean, in terms of like a proper GR, I mean, I did a couple of commercials.
Oh, cool.
And that's how I met this dude called Aaron, who at the time was good friends with the director of American Werewolf in Paris. And he said, "Oh, we're doing this film. My good friend I went to film school with is doing this film. I'm going to be working on it. I'll see if there's anything in it for you." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool. Yeah." I thought it was going to be like that forever. You just meet someone that gives you a ride. But so I went flew out to Luxembourg and shot that. But I mean, honestly, I think out of everyone you've probably interviewed, I mean, some people are in small parts in films. I was minuscule, and I mean, I was in it,
Yeah.
but quite a good few scenes. But I didn't even have one line. I had one word. I just had a word. I said "quoi," which is "what" in French, and that was it. As I was being about to be strangled. So yeah, but it was good fun. There was some good actors on that. There was Julie Delpy, obviously, Julie Bowen, who's obviously huge
Yeah.
now with
That was
Modern
like her
Family.
early, that was her early, she was like in Happy Gilmore maybe the year before or the year
Yeah,
after, right around that time. But yeah.
well, that's everybody was going. Oh, it's the girl from Happy Gilmore,
Yeah.
and then yeah, obviously she's huge now, and she's brilliant. In Modern Family. She was great fun on that film too, and actually, I think that's not that I've seen it for God too many years, but I remember watching her stuff, and that was one of my favorite parts actually. Her
No, she's really cool in the movie. It's so weird to see her in a different type of film. She's done movies like that, but more of like comedy-ish. Like that's mostly what
yeah,
her wheelhouse is, but it's cool when she plays like different types of roles, and she plays the role pretty cool because it pays like that homage to the original movie in that
yeah,
sense. So,
yeah,
it is
yeah,
a really cool, again, it's so hard. That's why, like, when we started this podcast, sequels are like the hardest thing because you can do like okay, we're going to do a
yeah.
sequel. We're going to look at the first one. We're going to build on what was already made, which is the right way to do it. But not saying I don't like the movies that do it the wrong way. And it's like an in name only sequel when it's like, oh, wait, why is this a sequel? And it's like, oh, we're going to mention this one character that isn't even in the movie, but we're going to reference him. Like there's a few,
Yeah.
sure that there's movies you can think of that are like that, but like there was one that we did, Meatballs 3. Like they have like a one-off line where the kid's reading a letter, and it's a letter from Bill Murray's character in the original, and that's the only really connection to the
Oh,
original. Like
really?
nothing even with the camp or anything, but no, it's interesting. So that's cool. All of these things that it wasn't like you were thinking of acting. It was other people were thinking of acting for you. And you just, the connections that are made along the way.
I don't know. Yeah, it's quite odd, really, the whole thing, because even I write and I've produced, and I've just directed my first short,
Oh,
and
awesome.
starting directing as well now, which is, but all of these things have kind of come to me rather than me go to them, because I think essentially I'm quite lazy. You know, I'm not lazy with the work when I get it, but maybe and I'm quite driven, but I'm not driven in the way some people are, that they're banging on doors. They're not, you know, they're at theatre at press night. They're hounding their agents, and maybe I should be, but
So that girl that that was in the pub, the Australian girl,
yeah,
she was an actress, or she just loved plays, or what was her issue? She
I
would set
I
that
don't.
up. Like what a random thing to do.
I think it was. I think, you know, like, you know, that the people that love that side of things, but probably aren't going to do it themselves, because I mean, I think she had a very well paid job in the city, and she's back in Australia now. And we recently reconnected, maybe about 2 or 3 years ago, I think probably during COVID. And she's great, and she's doing really well. But I think it was, I've met a few people that work the kind of city Wall Street jobs, and some of them are quite happy just to earn the money and do, you know, and some of them do extreme sports, and some of them want to get involved in the arts in some way, because it's just, you know, they need an outlet from what they do, I guess,
Yeah, no, that's true.
9 to midnight, or whatever. No, 6 till midnight probably these days. But yeah, actually, but talking of sequels, I did see the other day that there's on IMDb that there's American Werewolf in Rome listed. So
I've never seen
I don't
that
think it's been
before.
shot. Yeah, I looked today because I thought I better do a bit of homework, and so I'm not too lazy, obviously. And then yeah, it hasn't been shot yet. It's got
Rome.
2025 as a start date. Yeah.
Wow, look at that. I love that. Just the whoever wrote the description, a tribute to the classic 80s movie American Werewolf in London, at historical value by linking the origins of the werewolf to the epic history of Rome and its impact on the world.
Mm.
Hmm. We'll see how
Good work.
we'll see how that works. So after American Werewolf in Paris, one thing I have to mention, because you mentioned about watching with your dad, I don't know what it is about that movie. Even though you're a few years older than me, like my dad loved that movie so much. And I remember when I got him a DVD of The Great Escape, and it was like those old crappy DVDs that when the movie was over, it would sit on the title screen and it would just keep repeating like dun 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 dun. My dad would whistle that all the time. So
Yeah.
2 years ago, I talked to Peter Bernstein, Elbert Bernstein's son,
Wow.
and it was pretty cool to tell him like, hey, like obviously Peter's work's really cool. He worked on a lot of cool projects when he started composing, but his father, like that, I'm like, that song is like ingrained in my
Yeah.
head from hearing that
And
song all the time.
many people's,
Oh yeah.
yeah. I mean,
What a
yeah.
great movie. Like the
Yeah, it
cast
was a
and just
great film.
everything about that movie is unbelievable. But yeah, so after American Werewolf from Paris, you do that. You're doing student films. You did some commercials. What would you say? Because again, this is a crazy career that it's like, all right, I can dabble here and there. But when was the point that you think, or I don't know if it was like a time period you can remember, or a specific project you worked on that you're like, all right, this is what I'm gonna do for the rest of my life.
I mean, I think I instinctively liked it from the off, so it was going to take a lot to derail me, if I'm being
Yeah.
honest. Do you know? And I think it's two things. It's like the work, if it feels good to you, like the whole process of bringing that story to life and working on that script and that character, and if that's for you, you know it, I think. But it's all, but the other side of it as well was being on set was like a joy most of the time. I think I'm actually, most of the actors I know don't have, there's not many horror stories out there. There are the big horror stories we've all heard, but
Yeah. Yeah.
um, they're pretty few and far between. I mean, sets are a great place. I always say to people that ask me about getting into the industry, would be it behind the camera or in front, it's like you're going to work with amazing creative people and nowadays from all spheres and all walks of life, and which is only makes it more rich and more, there's more stories to tell and there's more experiences to share. So yeah, I mean, I think it was a slowish process, but I was always working. But
Yeah.
I managed to bag a decent agent early, and then just progression of work just came. And it's not Hollywood levels in the UK. Obviously, we I think we only had four. Well, we definitely only had 4 channels when I started. Or no, maybe 5. We did have Channel 5. So there was no streamers. So yeah, the work wasn't as but there were the shows that a few of them have gone now. Sadly, that always. I mean, everybody's pretty much TV debut in the UK was The Bill, or you earned your stripes on this cop show called The Bill. I mean, I think
Yeah.
going up to, I mean, I can't reel off all the names, but I know Kate Winslet did it. Lots of people did it, and it was that. And my wife, who's was a makeup artist, ended up working on it for 5 years. It's
Oh,
the sort of
really?
show you just because it just turns out stories every day. There was it was on about 4 days a week, and there was a new each. It was like a 40-minute show of there's a crime and there's but it was very much, there were detectives, but it was the cops on the beat, and it was kind of very relatable, I guess. But yeah, it's gone, sadly gone.
Oh man, those are the best shows. That's why, like nowadays, obviously there's so much content. But when I interview folks that started like the 80s and 90s, it's cool seeing those same shows that they started on. So like even like Musetta Vander, I'm talking to in a few weeks. I was like, oh, let me look at some of her old stuff, and I watched her on A Murder She Wrote. And in that
Oh
episode, there
wow.
was like 3 other people I knew, and it's like I know that is the case now because the people I'm watching on shows now, I don't know that they're going to be that next person. But even on shows now, I feel like they never give like an unnamed person like a good, decent role. Maybe on those, like what you mentioned, like The Bill in the States,
Yeah.
especially in New York, like people that are based out of New York, like doing Broadway, you'll see a lot of people that are on Law and Order. Like that's the beginnings
Yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah.
Is folks are on Law and Order, but no, that's cool. Did you meet your wife while on a set, or was it just at a pub?
Yeah, yeah, I did, but she was acting at the
Cool.
time, and then she went into
Oh, okay.
makeup. So yeah, yeah, yeah. So, and actually, that's connected with the guy who got me the role in American Werewolf, or pushed me
Real?
forward for that. Yeah,
Wow.
he made a short, and she was cast, and yeah, there we go.
Look at that.
Yeah,
Your first movie, like big set you're on. He introduced you to your wife. Look at
yeah, yeah.
that.
That's mad, isn't it? Yeah. Do you know? I only heard recently about, and maybe this is from this side of the pond, but obviously I don't know if you ever touch on the originals before the sequel, but obviously that was, for me, that was such an iconic
Oh
film
yeah,
growing up,
yeah.
and was so, we watched that over and over, me and my mates, until we wore the bloody tape out. I think especially with the, when they're becoming werewolves. I mean, those sequences were phenomenal for the
Yeah.
time.
They
But then
still
I
are. Like
recently heard,
Rick
yeah,
Baker is whenever I talk to special effects artists, that movie is the one that they talk about. It's usually uh, Rick Baker's transformation, American Werewolf in London, Planet of the Apes, like the Mask and the Planet of the Apes. But yeah,
yeah,
that was
yeah,
like a
yeah,
change. That was a game changer because even though The Howling came out that same year and had phenomenal effects as well, it was just you like saw behind the curtain a little bit when you
yeah,
saw things change before your eyes and not thought about like, oh, they're doing like a little bit of stop motion here on the growth of the nails. And yeah, it's just shocking to see. And then it's just such a weird movie. Like there are so many
yeah,
weird elements in the movie. You're like, wow, this is really gonna be like a scary thing. And then it's like kind of silly when you see
yeah,
each time they
definitely,
show,
yeah,
I can't think of
yeah,
his
yeah,
name, each time they show him, he's like, he's decaying more and more each time you
yeah.
see Griffin Dunn. Yeah.
We know because we had an amazing special effects guy as well on uh, Werewolf in Paris, Peter King, who's a British guy, but obviously Rick Baker's like legendary. But I think Peter King's done huge stuff. I should have looked him up before, but yeah, he again. It was, but I remember some of the younger guys in the special effects and how they were just talking about it's going to be hard to beat what's already gone, because I mean
Yeah.
it's just that those bone breaking sort of scenes when his back's going and is incredible. Yeah,
Yeah.
it
And
kind of
what was
makes me
cool
want to
about it,
watch it again.
again, it was 97, right? 97 was
Yeah,
American Wolf. Yeah. So that was that weird time of it was like the Wild West in CGI. So what thing I love about American Werewolf in Paris, there's different transformations. Like there's actual like legit practical special effects. And then there are like the CGI. And that was like the weird time because I think Jurassic Park kind of ruined it for everyone because
right.
Jurassic Park was the early movie that you knew it was CGI because obviously dinosaurs aren't around.
Mm,
So when you
mm.
saw some of those sequences and you're like, oh my God, like this is unreal. And then you see other movies that came out, there were big budget movies that are around that time. It was just they chose the wrong studio that sold them like a bill of goods, like, hey, even though this technology has been around for only a few years, we can make this movie look great. Because if you look at some movies around that time, you're like, maybe when you saw it initially, it's like playing a video game now from NES or any of those. You're
Mm.
like, wow, that looks so
Yeah,
cool back then. Now you play it now, you're like, it's
yeah,
just a bunch of blocks, like little pixels that look horrible. But it's like one of those,
yeah,
it's one of those weird things. But that's great that you had that experience on that movie. And
yeah,
so
yeah.
so at what point, so while you're acting, I know a few shows, obviously, like the difference of being in the States, like you mentioned, like the staples of like the Bill. One that I've heard of is like EastEnders. Isn't that a long standing show
Yeah, yeah.
in
It is.
England
It's
too?
still
Because I
going
see
there.
that on there. That was like your first, I know you had a recurring before on like a Holby City, but that one, it's 8 episodes you were on.
Yeah, I mean that's one of our it's continuing drama slash soap. I mean,
Hmm.
yeah, it was fun. It was good. I mean, the audiences back then were unreal for that show, and the other ones like it. But it was, yeah, it was good. I mean, it was quite interesting because it my character was outside of the main. There's, like it's one of those shows where it's set in one street and one square, and it's like, everybody goes into the local pub, and the dramas unfold on the street or in the pub or in the interiors of their houses around there. But my stuff was all away, except for I had one scene in the Queen Vic, and I was thinking, oh, my mum will like this. I'm in the Queen Vic, so it's all good. Yeah, so no, it was, I've got to forgotten I did that.
Interrompemos esse podcast para perguntar: quem você quer ser?
Designer, engenheira,
pedagoga,
administrador.
Quer saber? O Senac EAD é nota máxima no MEC. Tem cursos de diversas áreas, com conteúdo elaborado por especialistas do mercado e professores mestres e doutores. Ainda tem o Senac Carreiras, conectando estudantes a vagas de emprego em todo o país. Saiba mais em ead.senac.br/graduação.
Was that like a big change of pace? Because I don't know if soaps are shot the way over there, the way they are here, that it's more like boom, 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 like getting it done. Is that like that over there too? Yeah.
Yeah, completely. You've got to
it's like school. It's like going to school. I've talked to actors that went to acting school, and one of their first or second things was a soap. And it was like they were like going through acting 101, like right from the, like they knew how to do it because they tried to get so much done, because their goal was like, hey, let's have months off of work, so let's bang this all out. So it was like more like, not like, hey, let's get it right. It's like, let's get it done,
Yeah, let's get it and move on. And that is the nature of it. And because don't get me wrong, there is quality control there, and they are,
totally,
they've honed those scripts, and they have, worked as hard as they can on them. But then it's not going to win any awards for its camera work, and it's not going to win any awards for, I don't want to do, but certain aspects of it. It is more about, can we tell a story in a that its audience will relate to, and we need to tell a lot of story in a week. So that's how we do it. I mean, I think actually, I've worked on a couple of those now over the years, and I've worked on big stuff, which, sometimes you've done a scene in a day or two scenes. And there's pluses and minuses to both. And I think there's different skills to both. I mean, the pressure on big Hollywood actors to nail that scene because of their budget, and, and it's a massive scene and it's a massive stunt at the end of it. And then the actors on soap, and the crew, don't get me wrong, to be that consistently good and turn it around and that's a real skill as well. I mean, I know some people struggle with that, and but I would never ever, I never wanted to be in a big show for a long time like that, because I kind of like the variety, I like the change, but I really admire the actors that are brilliant at it and that I've worked with. I've recently worked with a few that are amazing.
Yeah, he's the one you're on currently, right? Emmerdale Farm. That's another one that's been around for, it's like an institution too. That's like 50, 55 years it's been around.
It's crazy. It's Emmerdale now. They've taken out the farm. But, yeah.
They sold the farm. And now
they sold the farm. They sold the farm. I just finished on that. And the two main actors that I worked on that, Zoe and Mark, were phenomenal, and really heavy storylines with. I mean, we had scenes with masses of dialogue and like maybe sometimes 5 to 8 a day. Now I'm coming in just doing that bit, and in the afternoon then going to do another. I'm only involved in that storyline. Yeah. So I can nail that. I'm fine. And then they've got to go and do someone else's storyline or be a part in someone else's storyline straight after or the next morning. It's relentless. It really is. I mean, but I have to say those two were phenomenal. And actually, you go, those actors, they're really good. And I've worked with some, people we'd call, named actors who were brilliant as well. But there's not much in terms of ability. There's not much between them. There's those particular two happen to be doing some of the others are doing Hollywood movies or big BAFTA winning shows,
Yeah, I know. Yeah, no, it's right. There's quality people everywhere. It just depends on what like niche, and then sometimes they get kind of pigeonholed into a role. Like I'm sure it's the same everywhere, but it's like there's sometimes it's like, okay, there might be an actress that is such a great actress. They don't do it as much anymore, but in the 80s and 90s, it'd be like she hits a certain age, and then it's like, okay, now you're the mom, and then you're like pigeonholed. Like once you play that one role, it's almost like you get. And so it's a good thing and a bad thing because sometimes I'm working, but I'm playing cop every time or lawyer every time. So yeah, there's some people that, hey, I'm going to embrace this and be the best lawyer that I can be. And there's other people like, oh, I want to do the variety of it. So there's like, there's pros and cons of each.
Completely.
It's like this hard thing. Just for people I talk to, I helped an actor write a book and he never wanted to be like the TV dad. And he said like,
when he got to us all.
Yeah. So he got to the point that they were going to start like doing that. And he's like, he wanted to play a homeless guy. He was like, because if I play an homeless guy, they can't make me the TV dad. That was like his fear. He hated doing that. So then no, he did what he did. He was a homeless guy in like a bunch of like TV shows. He was like that guy. Yeah.
Just say Bryan Cranston.
Yeah. Yes.
You know what I mean? That's your answer to that. But yeah, I mean, cop-wise, I did go through a period where I was cop. I was London cop, Manchester cop, comedy cop, American cop, Victorian cop. Yeah, I had my cop stage.
Yeah,
sure.
Because you have a casting director that knows, like, okay, we need a cop. I need somebody that is gonna not like take extra takes. Or let me call Alan. So it's like, again, it's like you've been working at a job. It's like you do your job sometimes too good that you're in that role that they know they can count on you for this specific thing. But so have you worked on any American productions out there? Like Hitman's Bodyguard, was that even an American production or was that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess it was. Well, they shot in Europe, but it was American, I intend, studio-wise. What was the other one? I mean, I've done a couple of Sony picture things like Second in Command. I'm missing one off. I feel like, where did I shoot? What is it? Abby Lerner, who's got a big place in Bulgaria. Yeah. Abby Lerner, the producer. Do you know Abby Lerner?
No, I can look him up. My question was going to ask you, because you're so used to obviously British in the way that everything is done, because all cultures have all differences when it comes to like how they probably run their sets. Did you see any difference like working on like a US set versus?
Yeah, well, I did Treadstone a couple of years ago, the series, which again they shot in Europe, but it was very much all American led. That was a bit different in that we did the action sequences first. It was a big shoot up in my house, and yeah, so the second unit director I met before I met the director, and then we did the drama afterwards. So it was but it was a well-oiled machine. But yeah, I mean, it was. Do you know? Again, even that is like American TV moves quite quick, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's my experience before was American film, which I think there is a bit more luxury to take your time and a bit more sort of let's get this right. But yeah, I was with Treadstone, it moved quite fast. I mean, I was glad I'd had my soap wings.
Yeah. No, I know. No, James Cameron's famous for like when he was working on Aliens, and he was pissed off that the British people were taking a tea break for an hour, like, and it was like such a big deal during the documentary on movies that made us on Netflix. But then it was like nothing. It was like nothing else. Like I've never heard that story about any other production, but it was like this big thing that he was so pissed off. I think the guy didn't like him anyway, and maybe made it like more of a deal. Okay. Is that a thing? Okay. A tea break?
I mean, yeah. I mean, there is an afternoon tea break, and there's sometimes a morning one. But yeah, I mean, it's coffee break as much as a tea. I mean, I think people probably label it a tea break because of the Brits and the tea. But yeah, I mean, I think it's sometimes just to give everyone a little. I mean, it's not an actor-led thing. I don't think. I think, well, from my experience, it's just the crew want a break as well for like 20
Yeah, I
minutes.
think that's
just
what it
to-
was. It was the crew. It was the crew, and then Sigourney
Yeah.
Weaver like stood up and had the back of the crew, and then everything was fine. But
Oh, because they shot that in Elstree, I think, didn't they? Yeah.
yeah, Pinewood. I
Or
think
was it
Pinewood.
Oh, Pinewood. Yeah, it was Pinewood,
Yeah.
wasn't it? Yeah.
Have you shot anything? Have you shot anything up there? Any of the Pinewood Studios or?
Yeah. Very lucky to. I shot. I co-wrote a film in 2015, which we shot in on one of the stages and the underwater stage.
Oh, sweet.
And yeah, it was great. It was my first script that had been made. I co-wrote with Paul, and yeah, it was brilliant. We were. I was in it as well and helped produce, but I mean, I produced in that pretty much. The produced.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was great. We had Danny Huston, Matthew Good, Joe
Wow.
Cole, and me, and we were 4 divers trapped in a bell at the bottom of the ocean.
Shit.
So yeah, it's I'm really proud of that. I think, there's like anything that you do, you look back and there'd be improvement if you could go back. But overall, I think it really stands up. It's kind of
pressure, right? Pressure.
Yeah, we were kind of. It's a shame, really, because I thought it was going to land better than it did, and it would have done, I feel, with the right push, but it didn't quite get the push. The people behind it liked it; they didn't love it. There'd been a change of ownership and things between us finishing it and the end of post. The typical thing that happens, and the people then that were running the company weren't as in love with it as the previous person, which was a shame, because I think I'd have seen that movie at the cinema if I wasn't in it, because 4 guys trapped at the bottom of the ocean, and it's the director Ron, who's a friend of mine, did an amazing job on that. I feel like, as in terms of, it's a real visceral film, and you feel like when we screened it, people were coming out feeling just wanting air. They felt claustrophobic. They felt like, God, I just want to go out now, but in a good way, and then wanted to chat about it. But it kind of puts you in that bell, and we were handheld a lot of the time in that bell, well, all the time, and the bell was small. It was a tiny set, and you get that kind of feeling of claustrophobia, paranoia about I mean, I had nightmares when I was just before we filmed it, because obviously I wrote it. I did loads of research and met divers, and did some diving myself to get into the zone of it, and then was listening to horror stories, reading books, watching documentaries, and then I remember I was waking up in the night a couple of times, and it was like the dream was me and the director were on a recce, and then we're going, "You've got to go down now to the bell and go to the bottom of the ocean." I was going, "I can't do it," because I'd had so many experiences reading these books of these horror stories, and I was
You felt like you lived them. How did the writing come about? Which is isn't that quite fascinating? Like, you're at the pub, that Australian girl starts to play, and then it's like, all right, maybe I do actually like this. When was the point that you're like, oh, I want to write stories that I want to see?
Well, I did a play quite soon after that, maybe about 4 years, and I got on really well with the playwright, and I told him this short film I'd written, and then we developed that for about the next year and a half, 2 years, and it got close. It got close to being made, but maybe looking back, I don't think it would work now. It's this kind of screwball comedy in the vein of like a Woody Allen, should I say, or a 50s kind of bringing up baby comedy. So, but it was funny and people liked it, but it probably wasn't cutting edge enough or distinctive enough. Is probably what it wasn't. But it was funny, and I'm still think one day I'll dust it off. But and then, as you always do. And then I met Ron, who directed Pressure, and we are the same age, but we'd grown up in different parts of London, but we had the same musical taste, the same football taste, because we ended up playing football together for this team. And then he had this idea, he'd written a script for a about growing up in London in 1980. And it's all about in 1980 in London. The streets were full of there was a lot of race riots. It was the tail end of punk, but you had ska, you had rude boys, skinheads, you had punks, you had heavy metal fans, you had new romantics coming in who were into the Spandau Ballet, etc., Visage. So there was a whole melting pot of tribes, and then you had the new mods who were also just coming around. So it was a youth tribe movie, basically. And he asked me to come on board, and we ended up co-writing it, and we got this script together, which everybody universally seemed to love in London, and we it was optioned by Studio Canal, which is a huge company in France. And we started casting, and we saw all the best young actors in London, who are now, a lot of them, big stars.
Yeah, that's cool.
And one of whom was Joe Cole, who we did end up working with on Pressure. People like Jack O'Connell. There was some great actors in there, and we nearly got financed about 4 or 5 times, and every time there was a couple of really comedy reasons we didn't get financed, down to one guy embezzling some money from a fund. He embezzled. I'm not going to name the fund but he embezzled like a fraction of it, and they had to close it down. So we regrouped, went again, we're about to get the money from another regional fund, because Studio Canal were always behind us. We just needed that little bit of regional money as well.
Yeah.
And then, the government changed to the coalition, which was the Lib Dems and the Tories, and they froze all the film funds. They just decided we need to take stock of all the arts, and we're going to freeze. And we were that was literally the 11th hour. And then we went again. Never say die, eh? And we got all the way to the top of one of the. Wanted to partner with this other company who were huge, and it went all the way through every exec who said, "Yes, this is brilliant. This is brilliant." We got to the very top of the exec, and she said, "It's a little bit like this that we've just done," and we were just like, "Oh." So it's but then that screenplay opened so many doors for us as writers and Ron as a director, and then Ron went on to make his first feature, Offender, which I was in too, and then Pressure came about. The producer came to us, said he had this idea for a script. He had a rough draft of a script that another writer had already done. Would we come on and make it a script that Ron wanted to film? So then that happened, and luckily we made that. So that was I guess how the writing came about.
Yeah, at least the doors are still open, even though you felt like it was closed. Like you said, you made those connections. That was key. Would you say you agreed with the executive that said there was a similar movie? Was there any similarities?
It was a TV series, actually.
Oh, okay.
And all it was it was in the same time period. 1980s in England. So the series is probably quite obvious. But I guess I think the thing is, somebody said it to me about this is how they put it. They said, "Listen, of these kind of companies," because they were quite, they make great stuff, and they're like, they look at their shows, their projects as art they hang on their walls, and they don't want 2 Rembrandts next to each other.
Yeah,
not calling my script a Rembrandt, but it was they don't want, they've done that. They want something else, or they want to work with that different filmmaker, and that kind of made me understand it a bit more. It didn't make me less bitter, but
in the States they would have done, another studio would have been like, "Oh, there's a movie coming out that's blank." Like there's so many. I know, like in the same year, like Volcano came out the same year as. It's so funny. The movies like blend in my mind. One has Pierce Brosnan, and then the other one has Tommy Lee Jones. Oh, Dante's Peak.
Yeah.
It was like in the same year, like the same movies came out, or even in the same summer. So, or
but
they try to rush movies out.
You have that like that's really rare to happen in the UK, because there's only so many places you can go when you're looking for money.
Yeah.
There's the broadcasters, there's the regional funds, then there's the private equity, and they've all got to align. So it's quite. But having said that, what happened a couple of years ago was I'm so surprised it still happened, but they had two great actors in each. They did two Churchill movies almost at the same time, but they had Brian Cox. One gang had Brian Cox, and the other ones had Gary Oldman. So you're just going to go, well, let's go.
I don't even remember the Brian Cox one.
Well, I don't know. I've never seen it either. I'm sure he's brilliant in it, but I think Gary Oldman was backed by a bigger. I think it was a bigger production. There was more money thrown at it, and also it was Gary Oldman.
And it was at the time that Brian Cox is a phenomenal actor, but he's like fully into like the general like film and TV watcher from Succession. Like everybody, oh okay, but a lot of people know him from like roles like in like it was a funny story about why he took the role. I forgot who was first asked for it, and they turned it down. But Brian Cox was in
Hannibal, wasn't it?
No, what is the name of the movie? Is it Super Troopers? No, the one with Broken Lizard. It's like a comedy movie that has all these guys.
Starship Troopers.
Starship Troopers? No, what is it called? I can't. Broken Lizards. I should know it. I've seen all the movies.
It's not a Sam Rockwell one, is it? The kind of jokey sci-fi.
It is called Super Troopers. I don't know why saying that. It just sounded wrong, but yeah, no, Super Troopers. Yeah, they're like state police, and Brian Cox is like the captain of the force. But anyway, it's like, yeah, you're right. Like the Gary Oldman, like at that time, it's like, all right, Gary Oldman, this is gonna be a winner because that's how they do movies. Like I never knew that till I talked to a producer, and they were like, yeah, people are gonna make a movie with Nicolas Cage versus Nicholas Smith because Nicholas Smith might be the better actor, but we can go to a bank and say, hey, Nicolas Cage's last 5 years, his movies grossed average this. So can you give us a budget of this? So I never thought they would bank movie. I don't know. That's, to me, I think it's silly.
Oh, it's crazy. And it's also, listen, as I say, I write and stuff a lot more than I was back then, but I've got a project now that I've just got the rights to. It's a true story of this runner. And I was talking to the author I went up to meet him in York on Monday, and it's about getting, the easiest way to get this film funded would be to get an actor on board, and and the right actor, and it has to be a certain kind of actor in my head. That it's a working class story, so I'd want a working class actor. There's not a huge amount of those in the UK of a certain age. I've got one in mind who's amazing, but if he's busy for the next 5 years, back booked up, and then the other thing you get is you get that. And then you get a delay on your project, and then they have to go. They've got, they're not. And I've got a script that I'm trying, another one that I think is getting closer to going. Actually,
it is this weird thing when it comes to budgets nowadays. There's no like middle of the road as much anymore. I don't know if you see that more in British. It's usually like, enormous, like ridiculous, like Marvel movie budget, like those type, and then there's like the bottom, but it just doesn't seem like there's that middle ground too much anymore. Maybe that'll change. Maybe that was like, maybe COVID hurt that and made it like that we have to get winners. Because even like in the States, it's like institutions are closing its doors when it comes to like Paramount Studios is closed now. They're going to lease the property. Universal backlot where they filmed like every 80s movie, like house scene, like the house from Christmas Vacation. It's 2 houses away from the Murtaugh's house and Lethal Weapon, like that little neighborhood that they have. They tore that down like 2 years ago to be able to build more studio space because they don't want to, they don't have the money or the patience, I guess, because they now studios are shooting on those schedules that smaller budgets have to do because they want to squeeze profits out because they want to make as much. So they'll like film a movie that maybe back in the day would take 2 months. They want to do it in a month.
Yeah, completely. And I think that middle ground has almost been taken over by think it's changing a bit at the moment, but by the TV landscape, that's where,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
that
Oh yeah.
that £15 million movie is now like a series maybe, or or a half a series. I mean, the budgets of some of them, but yeah, I think that's. But we've had some tax breaks come in since the government's changed recently over here. Are more. I mean, Labour are always a bit more favourable to the arts, so hoping that changes things. But yeah, going back, and I remember one of my scripts had a meeting with a company who I'm in conversations with. It looks like that could move forward, but I spoke to them recently when they first read the first draft. Well, it wasn't their first draft. The first draft they read, and I said, "Well, I could, because they were talking, about me possibly directing it as well." And I was like, "Amazing! Listen, I could make this for about £350,000." They were like, "Alan, let me stop you. We don't make things for less than 1.5. So there's, just don't go there. You're going, I'm doing you a favor. I'll save you some money." And then, no, that's not worth their while. And I've had that conversation with a few people. You think you're showing how much you can do on a small budget, but actually they're not interested in that. It doesn't make financial sense. Yeah. And once you then, and I think the only way you do that stuff is when you self-fund it, or you shoot something in 2 weeks and no one gets paid. You can probably only do that once, but that's the only way you do that kind of thing, because the time you get insurance, the time you do all those kind of things, your budget's gone beyond what your shooting budget is, So. Yeah.
No, it's an interesting thing. So it sounds like you want to direct. Like that's something you would want the opportunity to do for
I definitely listen. I just did a short, and it seems to be well received. People seem to like it. I mean, my crew and actors were like a joy to work with, and said it was a great experience, and wanted, thank you so much for asking me to do it. And again, it was a freebie, and we shot it for £2,000, and it looks great, I think, and it's just on its way to festivals now.
That's sweet.
So I have one script that's quite personal, and it's a small budget ish. Well, it is a small budget, but it's still, with these companies, it's going to be $1 million, not 300 grand or something.
Sure.
And it feels like, I originally took that out and it was optioned by quite a big British company about 4 years ago, but it stalled, and that we couldn't find the right director for it, because we didn't want anybody huge, because they wouldn't do it unless they fell in love with the material. And they didn't want somebody too green, because they just needed to have a little bit of work behind them and be on the rise. And so we never kind of landed the right director. But I'm now talking to another company that they seem to be like leaning towards, the story as well as anyone. You've just made a short, so we'll see. That would be great. I feel I could do that. I don't know if I'd go on beyond that and do another one, but I mean, that's something I can do. I know the world. It's a sports movie. I know that world inside out, and it's a father and son story. It's a thriller. It's kind of set in a world of sport. So yeah,
that's cool. How long do you have for the person you met earlier in the week to go over their story, like to start writing that? How long do you have to do that? Is there like a time period that you have set?
Well, I haven't. I mean, he was cool, and he's basically that script. There has been 2 versions of that already scripted by.
Okay.
One very good writer who I know, but I won't mention to him that I'm now taking it on. Or ask to see his script in case it's brilliant, and then I get the fear. But we've had a discussion. He's happy for me to go ahead and pitch it and see what I can do with it. So I've just written a treatment that encapsulates the part of his life, because the book's about his whole life. I want to tell a part of his life. And then, but it's weird actually, because I was just going to do that and then pitch it around to a few companies, because it would take a certain budget, and it would take a certain, it would take a company of some. I don't think there's a small company that's going to get behind it. It doesn't need billions or millions. but it needs a little bit of a budget. It's period and everything, so
Okay.
it's set. But and then this morning I woke up and just was, because I plotted the whole story in my head and made notes, and I finished the treatment almost. I just thought, right, starting writing it. So I've written about 10 pages this morning. So, let's see if I can keep up my momentum with it. But it's a wonderful story. So, yeah.
I know I've talked to a few people, like when they found like books that they wanted to, like they found like a book that it was impossible to find who the author was, because or somebody that's like next of kin that they can be able to get like a deal for the IP.
Right. Yeah.
So like the one guy I talked to, he's like, yeah, we pretty much we've made it like we made the movie just in time before it would go to someone else. So
okay.
That's what was the big thing in the 80s here. Like there was like that Canon movie group. They made like a bunch of like super cheap 90 minutes of film because they didn't want to pay for the next box of film. So they had the IP for like Spider-Man, and they had the IP for, I'm trying to think of what other superhero, but they used to every year make like these really crappy fake movie trailers. They would really film like probably like little 30-second, 1-minute sequences of something. And then most of it was really not Spider-Man in the trailer. It was just pictures of city or scenes from their other movies. And they were just trying to get like enough like, hey, this would be really cool in order to make it. And then it lapsed, and then it went up for auction again, or however that works. But I always find that so fascinating. That it's like, oh wait, I'm the only person that can make this for X amount of years. And then if you don't, it's like you piss away like that $10 million for like some kind of property because you can't get the right thing together. But
it's hard. I've done a couple of books over the years. Both of those haven't been made yet. One of them we got a thing over here similar to the Blacklist called the Brit List. So one of them was on that.
Oh, cool.
But,
nice.
And actually, it's been looked at the moment by somebody. That was I guess that was you're talking about when did you sort of learn and realize you wanted to do it? Probably on the writing score, it was that, but it's a hard book because it was about, a lot of it was in the guy's head. The main protagonist. So, and I didn't want to do voiceover. I was trying to avoid that like the plague. So, but I mean, it's a serviceable. It's a really interesting script, and actually, maybe if I do get my film away as a director, that's something I'd look at again to direct. But it's very dark. I'm luckily I'm steering slightly. My agent's always on at me. My literary agent is sort of She's a fan of dark, but she's like not too dark,
Yeah. Especially those Blacklist scripts. There's one over here that I'm hoping finally gets made, because they finally made the Reagan movie with Dennis Quaid. It's like a very pro-Reagan movie, like that Reagan was like your choir boy. Like nothing that he did was like wrong. The way they portrayed the movie, because it's like a super like Republican, whoever wrote it. But anyway, there's been like this Reagan Black script, which I'm sure there's other things that could be done this way, but they talk about like in the 80s that Reagan that was like developing dementia. And in the script, it was basically like Reagan was replaced by an actor. I think Will Ferrell was somebody who's attached to it, but then they were like, yeah, we can't make it. But that was a script that was on that Blacklist here for a long time. And maybe after, I know it's kind of but again, it's a comedy, it's a movie, but no, that's interesting. So that's real cool.
You just reminded me quickly of a story on that, very similar to that. It was the director of American Werewolf in Paris. He wrote a script about Yuri Gagarin, the first man in space. And I read it, and it was a brilliant script. And one was with Yuri Gagarin, he was the first man in space. Hugely, became a symbol of Russia, the USSR, because and he was paraded around the world, and all he wanted to do was get back in the skies and fly again. But they wouldn't let him. They sent him all over the world to meet all these dignitaries, and in truth, Yuri Gagarin turned to the bottle and became, a bitter kind of alcoholic, and which was a really interesting story about, you've taken somebody who did this for you, and you're trying to make him this, but all he wants to still do is that. But
Yeah.
Anthony had money from, if I remember rightly, from Russia. The Russians said, you got to take all that stuff out. You know, this is our hero here, you know. So
that is an
it's a
interesting
very
story. You
similar
take
thing.
somebody, you're taking somebody that obviously this is what they want to do, but in order to sort of like show off in a sense, and maybe like let people know, like, hey, we did it first. Maybe that's why they were parading him around like he was
No,
like a piece of art.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Al, it's been fun. I always love to ask people in the beginnings, because it's always like you never have like the wherewithal, or it's not in your headspace when you're doing something for the first time to think about like that moment. Oh, this is my first time. Did you ever keep any mementos from sets, like maybe your first like soap or American Werewolf in Paris, like scripts or wardrobe or anything?
Yeah. I used to do it with every job. I'd take a little something. And I just stopped doing it. It's a shame, but I did. I've got props where I've died that have gone through me.
Oh, that's cool. That's a good thing to keep.
And then I think I still do have the werewolf script in the loft.
That's sweet.
Yeah, then shell casings from guns when we were shooting stuff. Few bits of clothing. Signed. I did a period thing where I was a knight, so I had a signed letter. I think I've got that still somewhere, which is written, in the writing of the day with a quill. So little bits and bobs. And I thought I'd do it and keep it and give it to the kids, but then I just stopped doing it, and I think I don't know why I stopped doing it. Maybe I just got like I probably won't trying to think. Maybe I did a job and there was nothing worth taking or having, so I stopped. But yeah, no, I think that's the initial buzz you get, and I think when you first start, it's like, oh, there's a read through. There's my name. You see it on Instagram all the time, don't you? With somebody at a read through going, "Oh, this is me at a read through as a character or my trailer." And I think after a while, you just feel like, yeah, all right.
Yeah, even though there was like camera film, like people could have cameras in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, but I think the idea of the cell phone kind of takes it away, because you can go through your memories on your phone and be like, oh yeah, this is something from that shoot. But whenever I ask people that, there's some people that are like, yeah, like I talked to this big time character actor, Stuart Penkin, and he was like looking to the right when I asked him the question. He goes, there's a closet right there. It has a stack of scripts that I'm going to give to the kid that I hate the most when I die. And then another guy was cool because he was on a bunch of, not like big roles. This guy, Gregory S. Cummings, he was just in big budget movies, and they had some really cool like gifts. So like they would give, like he had a shirt from like, he was one of the henchmen that Stallone kills in Cliffhanger. So like a Cliffhanger, like end of thing shirt. So again, some people it's like keepsakes, mementos. I don't know. I'm one of those, we've moved a bunch of times, and we moved out to Oregon a couple of times, which is on the other side of the States. And it was like a good thing because you get rid of all the crap that you wrote, whatever could fit in our little Honda Civic, we brought across the country. And that was mostly like vinyls and books, and then clothes and garbage bags for the most part. But yeah, it's always like this interesting thing, but it's cool that you had the wherewithal to keep those things.
I remember the cool one, actually. We went, I was filming in Romania, and we were playing Marines. It was a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, actually. And
okay.
We, the producer arranged for us to go to the American embassy and meet the Marines guarding it, because that's what the film was about. It was about an embassy under siege. Of course it is. We went and met the Marines, and one of them was really cool, and he showed us all where their little quarters where they lived and hung out and stuff. And he said, "Do you want a T-shirt?" And I was like, "Yeah." It was like, it was their unit's T-shirt, like, so it just had a little insignia here. I've got it over there somewhere.
That's cool.
And then you spin around, and it's just got this massive graphic on the back of these like warrior kind of dogs on it, all dressed in Marine. It's like, it's not something I'd ever wear, but like, I
Yeah.
think I've worn it to the gym a couple of times and I'm trying to look really tough, but
Yeah. That's a cool moment,
it's-
right? Somebody just like, hey, let me give you this shirt. And even though to anybody else, but it like takes you back to that time. Working on
it was
that
cool
film and
because,
stuff.
how often do you get to be, in the marine bit of an embassy? I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome, Al. Well, thanks so much. This has been fun. I'm happy we connected
Yeah,
finally.
nice.
Wasn't Alan great? I love hearing the stories about people that, especially like, I don't even want to be an actor. He gets convinced by that Australian girl. Okay, I'll be an actor. And then he's like, all right, I want to start writing and directing. And like his story about the film Pressure and filming that and how much he was like living and breathing that he was having like nightmares of that scenario. And the fact that he was able to get like a hot shot, a great actor like Danny Huston to be in the movie. Really cool. So Alan, thanks so much for taking the time. Do me a favor. If you haven't done it yet, subscribe, like, share, follow us on all social media at Sequels Only. And your homework, American Werewolf in Paris. If you're in New Jersey, you could just, hey, Doug, I'm going to stop by, borrow that VHS tape and that VHS player. But if you're not going to do that, I'm sure you can find it online for a few bucks. It looks like it's on Amazon Prime. So, it's on everything. You guys are lucky. Amazon Prime, Peacock, Tubi, Pluto, you name it, all free. Even Crackle and Plex. If you're that kind of person, do it. Crackle people are different than us. But yeah. So don't forget to review, rate, share our podcast. Follow us on all social media at Sequels Only. And don't forget to check out our website, sequelsonly.com. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, guys.